Good evening, everyone. It is November 1st. It is 6:34 p.m. This is the Natick Select Board meeting. The meeting is being recorded by Natick Pegasus and being broadcast. Thank you to them for doing so. Open meeting law provides for certain topics to be discussed in exec session. The reasons must be declared by the chair, and the board votes via voice vote on whether or not to go into exec session. The reasons for entering exec session tonight are: A, pursuant to Mass General Laws 30A, Section 21A3, to discuss strategy with respect to litigation where an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the litigating position of the public body, and the chair so declares. Linda Valentin et al. Versus Town of Natick et al., docket number 21-CV-10830, District Court, Massachusetts. B, pursuant to Mass General Laws 30A, Section 21A3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the public body, and the chair so declares. Natick Patrol Officers, Local 4963. So I will entertain votes here. All in favor say aye. Mr. Joseph?
Yes.
Who moved and who seconded?
Oh, sorry, we're going to skip this up.
I moved.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Thank you, Kristen. Okay, let's try that again. Mr. Joseph?
Yes.
Ms.
Yes.
Coughlin?
Yes.
Mr. Sidney?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. So we will now be going into exec session. I'm told that there's a person waiting on in open session. We will have, this will not be broadcast. We hope to be back at about 7:15 p.m. And I understand that you're wanting to hear about the town park. Let's get to the right one. Public engagement process for South Natick park system. So that's going to be towards the end of the agenda. I would say try to come back maybe 8:30, and that ought to be in the range of when we're there. Possibly 8:15 if we're really efficient tonight. So again, we're going into exec session, so thank you for standing by. Okay, so we're reconvening, and we will now do the Pledge of Allegiance in a moment of silence for those serving on our behalf. Oh. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. Okay. We're now at the section for announcements. I'm hoping we can get through these pretty quickly. The first is the announcement of the Mass Senior Circuit Breaker Program. It's really just an update that said the state decided to double the amount of that program from $1,200 to $2,400. So that is good news for our seniors. The next item, item B, is the update on the Community Preservation Committee appointments. We're extending the deadline to Friday, November 10th. We'll be interviewing candidates during our November 29th meeting. And item C, over to you, Ken.
The Select Board would like to announce that our Town Council, Karis North, has been chosen as one of the top women of law by Massachusetts Lawyers Weekly, and is tonight being celebrated at Heinz Convention Center. So I wanted just to let you know that we are very lucky to have such talented town council representing our interests, and she is also serving as this year's president of the Mass Municipal Association Lawyers Association, MMLA. So we just wanted to recognize her and to thank her for her service and to let the town know how lucky we are to have her.
Thank you, Ms. Coughlin. I really appreciate you bringing that to our attention. I think you flagged that first and repeatedly asked me to put that on the agenda, and I finally have done so. Next up is And I want to thank Mr. Joseph for enabling a good transition for me into the Natick 180 world. And I went to the first steering meeting this morning, and have a couple announcements that were from that. One is called the QPR Suicide Prevention Training. QPR stands for Question, Persuade, Refer Suicide Prevention Training. Will take place on Tuesday, November 14th from 6 to 8 p.m. at the Natick Community Senior Center in room 125, I believe, not 12S. This is a 2-hour in-person training offered for free to the Natick community using the evidence-based QPR curriculum. The training is facilitated by the Natick Health Department's Natick 180 team, which is the town's community resource for addiction education, prevention, and recovery information. A light dinner will be provided. If you have any questions or dietary restrictions or need the link to register, please contact Natick 180 at natick180@natickma.org. The next item is COVID-19 isolation guidance, and this is from the Director of Public Health. COVID-19 remains a highly transmissible respiratory disease. While vaccines, treatment options, and boosters are readily available, prevention of spread is essential. And this is just a reminder of the isolation and exposure guidelines. And the guidance remains the same since October 2022, but to refresh, whenever somebody is ill and suspects they may have COVID, a PCR or rapid antigen test should be done. For anyone who lives, works, or attends higher ed in Massachusetts and tests positive for COVID, the following guidance should be taken regardless of vaccination status. The day after a positive result, isolate for 5 days. If no symptoms or symptoms improve, end the isolation on day 6, but wear a mask until day 11. If unable to mask, isolate for 10 days. More information is available on the mass.gov Department of Public Health website. And then for further information that might be Natick specific, call the Natick Board of Health. And the last one is that it is November 4th through 11th is is Kindness Week. This is an annual event, and this is the the 6th time that it has been put on by Spark Kindness. For more information, see sparkkindness.org. That's it. That takes care of announcements, unless anyone has another. Okay. Seeing none. Public speak. Any individual may raise an issue that's not on the agenda, and it will be taken under advisement by the board. There's no opportunity for debate under this portion of the meeting, and this section is limited to 15 minutes, and any one individual is limited to 5 minutes. Is there anyone? Mr. Joseph?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Paul Joseph speaking, not on behalf of the Select Board role, but just as a private citizen. As many people know, I've been actively involved in a group that's a political committee called Natick Charter Commission Signature Committee. That group is basically advancing the idea that we should explore the idea of creating an independently elected charter commission to consider broad changes to the structure of our form of government. This initiative would be a complement to what is being done through the town meeting process through the Charter and Bylaw Review Committee. The reason I'm standing here tonight is that at the website natickcharter.org, under the tab Learn More, there are information resources provided there, and we recently updated to provide a PDF formatted sheet that's basically a campaign strategy sheet. We firmly believe that it's important to bring new voices and new perspectives to this process, and we'd very much like to see new members of the community step into the potential role of becoming charter commissioners that would be seated to evaluate and potentially recommend changes to our form of government. This is a big ask of people that might not heretofore have been involved in town government or deeply involved, so we felt it was important to provide some objective guidelines and suggestions on how to launch and run a campaign. The committee itself is not endorsing any candidates, but we do want to level the playing field and provide equitable access to information that would help people that would otherwise might not know where to get a start on a campaign. This 3-page document is there. So again, it's at natickcharter.org under Learn More, Info Resources. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Joseph. Jamie, is there anybody online that? Okay. All right, moving on to discussion and decision. We have the first up, the police chief's recommendations for reserve police officer appointments. Turn it over to Chief Hicks.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the board. Let me just get my papers in order here. As you know, I always say this because it's always true. It's always a great opportunity when you're beginning careers in this profession, and especially working for this organization and for this town. And you, as the appointed authority, have that ability to start those careers. And I'm here tonight respectfully requesting that this board, as an appointed authority for the police officers of the town of Natick, appoint the following candidates as I'll describe as reserve police officers. I want to explain, because I'm not sure if there's new members. We do this as a process of appointing reserve officers. We do reserve officers basically in order to create a pool of candidates. And a pool of candidates are created so that we can efficiently hire and appoint based on usually academy dates that sometimes comes up very quickly, and they're few and far between. So by having a pool of candidates, we take and do the entire process and create that pool. And as we need candidates, we come back in front of you and appoint them as permanent officers. This evening, there's 6 reserve officers, and I'll be back in front of you in 2 weeks because we have 4 openings that I'm going to be asking you to appoint them as permanent officers. But tonight, we start off with them as reserve officers as part of that process. And of course, I will ask that there will be a motion made to appoint them, and the motion should state that it be contingent upon successful completion of medical examination, psychological examination, physical abilities tests, completion of the police academy, and any other requirements necessary for successful certification with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Human Resource Division. Yeah, it's in the memo. Yes, it's the introductory paragraph of the memo. And just for a matter of time or perspective, all these candidates have gone through a rigorous process. It's been literally, I think, 13 weeks that we went through in order to get them here. And we wholeheartedly support their appointment. First up is Jaylene Arroyo. Ms. Arroyo is 22 years of age, and the memo says she resided in the Bronx. As of today, she's in Medway. So now she's a Medway, Massachusetts resident. She graduated from Bronxdale High School in 2019. Immediately upon graduating, she had joined the U.S. Army and still serves as Army Reserve as a military police officer, which she currently holds a rank of E4. Interesting that when during her process, she related that the experience helped her to learn discipline, teamwork, and develop a strong work ethic, which we heard from her supervisors. One of her supervisors said that she's a very hard worker and having good critical thinking skills. Again, skills we need in policing at this point in time. Next one is Cooper Fennell. Cooper is our young one. He knew I was going to say that. Cooper is 21 years of age and currently resides in Natick. And he's here tonight. Well, let me go back. No, excuse me. Cooper resides in Natick, and he's here tonight with his mother, Julie, and father, Michael. He'll raise a hand. Who's here to support him. Mr. Fennell graduated from Natick High School in 2021, where he played baseball and soccer. And speaking to his employers, he's described as trustworthy and related that anybody would hire him and would hate to lose him. And he also volunteers at Open Door Natick. Observed that he was kind and helpful to the people he served. Next one is Nicholas Burke. Mr. Burke is 23 years of age and currently resides in Brighton, but he has lived most of his life in Wellesley. with his mother, Nicole, father, Edwin, and sisters, Kayla and Brianna. He's here tonight with his girlfriend, Erin, who's here to support him tonight. Mr. Burke graduated from Wellesley High School in 2014. In Merrimack College, we earned a bachelor's degree in criminology. Mr. Burke currently works as an independent contractor for the Henry Burke Funeral Home in Wellesley. When speaking to his supervisors, he relayed that Mr. Burke is diligent, great to work with, super respectful, quote, double quote, they wanted to emphasize that to clients and families. Also described him as down-to-earth, punctual, and easy to talk to. These are all the things that we need and we want as a Natick police officer. When asked, he said that he thought that building and keeping the trust of the community would be a priority for him. Again, another good quality. Next up is Maria Jose Gutierrez. And Maria is here supported by her friend Nellie. Where's Nellie? There she is. Ms. Gutierrez is 27 years of age and currently resides in Framingham with her mother Marina and brothers Erwin and Louis. Ms. Gutierrez was born in Bolivia, come to this country with her mother when she was 4 years of age and is now a United States citizen. She's fluent in both English and Spanish. Ms. Gutierrez wrote in correspondence to the department right at the beginning, at a young age, and this is a quote from her, "At a young age, I had witnessed my mother sacrifice and overcome many obstacles while having to raise me in unfathomable situations. While learning about my mother's life and challenges she had endured all on her own quickly made me realize the passion I have to be a hand of help to others. The reputations that come with being a police officer is the same influence I would like to represent in and out of the uniform. I find great pride in my ability to serve and protect the current and future generations." Clearly, a good fit for this profession and for this organization. Maria's mother could not be here tonight, but she hopes to be here when we make the appointment for permanent officer. And next is Amanda McNeil. Amanda's here tonight with her mother, Nicole, and her friend, Chris, who's here to support her. Amanda Ms. McNeil is 31 years of age and currently resides in Quincy. Ms. McNeil graduated from Quincy High School in 2010 and Quincy College in 2015, where she earned an associate's degree in history. She currently works as a public safety dispatcher with the Quincy Police Department, their loss. When asked at the Quincy Police Department, they stated she's a pleasure to manage, is a great kid, and very enthusiastic about becoming a police officer. And she loves to work hard and do her job, and she does it well. That all comes from her supervisors at the Quincy Police Department. And finally is Jared Marifiotti. Jared is here tonight with his mother, Laura, and his father, Robert, back here, who's also here to support him. Mr. Marifiotti is 24 years of age and currently resides in Framingham with his mother and father. He graduated from Framingham High School in 2010 and Anna Marie College in May of this year. Will graduate in May of this year, correct? Just graduated. 2018. Okay. 2018. It's a typo. He earned his bachelor's degree in criminal justice. He also still continues, he's taking graduate courses and plays baseball for the Anna Maria College, and he's a team captain. He currently works at the Metro West YMCA in Framingham as assistant camp counselor. And getting descriptions from his supervisor, they say he's a great worker who is solid, dependable, dedicated, loyal, punctual, and a team player who works well with everyone. He's an excellent communicator who thinks fast on his feet and knows how to deal with difficult situations while still keeping control. Again, great qualities we need and we want here for the Natick Police Department. These are the 6 candidates in front of you that I am recommending for that appointment. To make this appointment does require and will require a bypass of Michael DeSantis and Ahmed Matet as part of this process. And with that, Mr. Chair, these are my recommendations.
Just well, first of all, thank you all for being, congratulations. Second, the bypass, do we have to vote that separately? Or?
Yes.
Yes.
Separately and second.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Okay, do we have a motion for the bypass?
No,
That needs to be second.
Has to be the second one.
Oh, I'm sorry. You did say the words and
Second.
they went in one ear and out the other. All right, so do we have a motion? Richard?
I move that we appoint Jaylene Arroyo, Cooper Fennell, Nicholas Burke, Maria Jose Vaca Gutierrez, Amanda McNeil, and Jared Marifiot as reserve police officers, contingent upon successful completion of a medical examination, psychological examination, physical abilities test, completion of the police academy, and other requirements necessary for successful certification with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Human Resources Division, to be effective today, November 1st.
I have a seconder.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Pope. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I'm sorry, comments.
In discussion,
Yeah,
if you may. Again, just I want to echo the thank you, and I'm sure our vote will be a supportive one, but I did receive a direct communication from a Natick resident specific to Mr. Fennell's application. So Natick people love hiring Natick people, and it's great to see a local person stepping into this role. But more broadly, I'm looking across this group of 6 and saying Natick wants more people of diverse backgrounds, of different experiences, and we want to build a community that looks like the officers that are supporting us and vice versa. So I'm honored to be making these recommendations and appreciate all of you for what you're bringing to this department. So thank you.
Mr. Sidney.
Yeah, I just want to say congratulations, and reading through your bios, which I did earlier today, from the chief's memo, I sincerely hope that you all get appointed and that you all stick with us, because you seem such high quality. I imagine others will be chasing after you, and we want to keep good quality people.
Thank you, Mr. Sidney. Ms. Coughlin and Ms. Pope.
Just a ditto. I'm really impressed with your backgrounds, and I'm thankful that you are looking to Natick to make your next professional home. So thank you for stepping forward.
Ms. Pope.
I don't mean to be biased, but I am encouraged by the amount of women standing here. I think this is the first time we have seen this many women here, and so I'm very encouraged by that. Congrats to you all, but I had to shout that out.
I wasn't biased. I was not at all biased. So I'll do the ditto rule also, but I am encouraged. Mr. Joseph said more or less what I wanted to say, which is I'm very encouraged to see the work that the police department is doing to broaden the recruiting practices that it has. That's an area that we're striving as a town to do better at. And you can't have a better picture demonstrating that. And it's the classic of you can say what you want about embracing diversity and inclusion, but when you actually do it and it's tangible evidence of it, it speaks volumes. So welcome, all of you, and I wish you success in your careers. And please, we're allowed to shake. Oh, we have to do the second part first. Yes, sorry.
We have to vote
first.
Oh, yeah, that too. All right, so we were getting carried away here. So all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. Now we go to the second piece.
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Coughlin.
I'd like to move to support the bypass recommendation for candidates Michael DeSantis and Ahmed Matet.
Second.
Okay. Moved by Ms. Coughlin, seconded by Mr. Sidney. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Now we can invite them all up.
Yes. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Congratulations. Thank you. Welcome. Congratulations. Congratulations and welcome. Congratulations and welcome.
It's always nice to pull people over the board.
Congratulations and welcome.
Congratulations.
Congratulations and welcome. Congratulations and welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just as a heads up, 4 of them are going to be going to the academy within the next 6 weeks. I'll be back in 2 weeks for that appointment to permanent positions.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you, Chief.
Thanks very much, Chief. They're not standing.
Thank you, Chief.
Right?
Yeah, that goes
You emptied the room there, sir.
there goes our room right there.
Can we start hiring some seat fillers or something?
Yeah, I know. I know. We need to hire extras. John, look big so you fill up the... All right. Let's see. Are we...
No, whatever order you want.
Okay, well, I thought that Mr. Ostroff was going to be here to talk about the Friends of Natick Trails, but I do not see him. He's not online, right?
I don't see him online yet, no.
All right, so I think that's a pretty straightforward thing, so I'm going to move ahead. I have his motion. Does anybody, I can move it if no one has it in front of them.
I have it in front of me, too, so,
You guys are just expert.
go ahead, Catherine.
I move to accept and acknowledge the $7,500 donation from Bethany Byer and the $5,000 donation from Wayne and Jeanette Schritzer, as described in the October 18, 2023 memorandum to the Natick Select Board from the Friends of Natick Trails. Said funds to be deposited into the Coquitchuit Rail Trail Revolving Fund to help the town maintain the CRT in a state of good condition consistent with the intention of the donation.
Do I have a
Second.
second? Seconded by Mr. Sidney. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. With
All right,
thanks.
moving on to item C, review decision of the hearing officer for the dangerous dog hearing. So I want to read a statement first before we go into that. To set the stage for this item on the agenda, I recommend that the board review the hearing officer's decision and vote to either approve or not approve that decision. I will not allow public comment or discussion. This is not a public hearing, but simply on the agenda. Public comments and discussion occurred during the public hearing that was held by the hearing officer. However, as part of this review, board members can ask questions of the hearing officer about the process, fact-finding, and other items that led to the recommended decision. While the public may be present in this open session, it's not a chance to relitigate the case. Does everybody understand those rules? Okay, so Mr. Townsend was the hearing officer on this dangerous dog hearing, so I turn the floor over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, John Townsend, Deputy Town Administrator, Director of Finance, and Dangerous Dog Hearing Officer. I'm fully aware of your sort of packed agenda tonight, so I don't want to get into too much detail with regards to the actual decision on here, but just go over and sort of touch just a couple of things for you. We did hold a public hearing on September 18th. At that particular point in time, we did receive sworn testimony from both the complainant as well as the respondent, as well as two witnesses. Everybody who was there wanted to testify, were able to testify. Everybody was duly noted. This does come under Chapter 140, Section 157 of the Dangerous Dog Hearing statute. Basically, it involves a two-part analysis. The first part is to determine whether there was indeed a dangerous dog. There's a nuisance dog, and there's, of course, no decision. And, of course, there's the dangerous dog. After hearing the testimony from the witnesses as well as the respondent and the complainant, I did make the determination that RV, who's the canine in question, was indeed a dangerous dog. After I made that particular decision, then, based on the testimony, I had to make recommendations with regard to the remedies in this particular case. Actually, Chapter 157, Section 140, Section 157 does provide for 7 different remedies with regards to a dangerous dog. So, based on the testimony, I took a look at those and made decisions with regards to what I recommend with regards to this particular case. The one thing I would just like to bring up briefly, and I go into some depth with regards to it in my opinion, is that the 7th option of the remedies in the statute is the option to put the dog down. Based upon the testimony and the evidence, I did not feel that that was necessary in this particular case, and the remedies that I did recommend for this particular matter would safely make certain that the public safety was preserved. So just briefly, the remedies that I did recommend in my order. First of all, regarding the confinement of the dog. And this is one of those areas that I did put a footnote in there with regards to my findings here, because I did find that the owner of the dog and her particular property was actually equipped as a kennel. Now, I did understand from the sort of back and forth between some of the some of the individuals involved in this incident. There is an additional matter with regards to use of the property as a kennel and licensing. However, that's not really under my purview, and I said that explicitly to everybody, would not hear that, but there are kennels involved on the property, set up on the property, and I found that it was a good place to confine the dog should that be necessary to do so, and I ordered that. So basically, the dog is confined to the property, except in very specific circumstances. When the owner does take the dog off the property, it's to notify the animal control officer, and it must be restrained in proper manner in accordance with the statute that sets forth the size of the leash and the muzzle and everything. And also the gates on the property, which is one of the major contributors to this particular matter, had to be repaired. And actually the animal control officer had to testify and make certain that they were actually repaired. Also, in addition to the gates, signage had to be posted on the gates warning the public there is a dangerous dog on the property. I also ordered the neutering of the dog. That's one of the options under the statute. Required additional insurance on the property of $100,000. And then finally, required an evaluation by a dog behavioralist as well as a trainer, and receiving training approved by the animal control officer within 1 year of the particular order. After satisfactory completion of the order and no further aggressive incidents, and upon favorable recommendation of the animal control officer, the respondent can request that the board remove the designation of dangerous dog and remove the restrictions if you find that that would be appropriate. That is just the nutshell with regards to what the order contains. If you have any questions, happy to answer them.
Mr. Chair, I have a question for Mr. Richards.
Awesome.
Mr. Richards, are you appearing at this before the board in the capacity of representing the respondent?
Good evening. Had to be unmuted. Yeah, I was just participating really as representing her, reviewing the process and the decision of the board.
Mr. Richards, can you tell us whether the dog is resident at 5 Azalea Circle currently?
The dog is.
The dog
As
is
far
not-
as I know.
Okay, well, my understanding is the dog was vaccinated for rabies in Idaho, Eagle Creek, Idaho, on 8/5/2023. The dog is currently not licensed and is over the age of 6 months. Do you know anything about that?
No, I'm not aware of the vaccination. I know that the dog's being neutered next week. I do not know where.
The vet that we have...
But I can
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I can certainly communicate. She is away this week, and we just got notice yesterday of this hearing, but I can certainly get more information on where the dog received the rabies shots and provide that information to the board upon her return.
And whether it needs an update.
It doesn't need an update. It was a 1-year shot and it expired. According to the vet, her vet of record in Framingham, with whom I spoke this morning, there's not a schedule with that vet to have the animal neutered, and she referred me to an Eagle Creek, Idaho vet with whom I was unable to get in touch. Well, I was able to get in touch with them, but they don't have a dog called by this dog's name. And so I was wondering if the dog had been sold and moved out of state. And if so, that would be impossible. It's beyond our jurisdiction, but it's not possible for me to obtain records because the dog's name would have been changed. And all of
Yeah,
those,
not to my knowledge, the dog is still boarding in Natick, as far as I know.
so the Natick Town Clerk does not have this dog licensed. The findings or the recommendations that Mr. Townsend has made, some of them would be moot if the dog doesn't live here any longer, and some of them would be struck. I'm not quite sure how to proceed at this point.
So let me, go ahead. Mr.
If I may, according to her testimony as well as her written testimony, the dog has been vaccinated for rabies.
She was incorrect. So in the letter that she sent us, she said the dog was vaccinated on May 19th, That vaccination was just the DHPP. I confirmed that. So when you look at the letter from the vaccination, it lists in a column all the vaccinations and then the dates in the next column. So that is not.
Yeah, it's misleading.
It is misleading. So it says 5/19, but the dog was not vaccinated at the time of the attack for rabies, wasn't vaccinated until 8/23, according to the dog's vet of record in Framingham.
Right. Clearly, the dog was not, the testimony, once again, the hearing was that the dog was not vaccinated at the time of the attack. As far as what my understanding is, the DPH's regulations that they don't have to be vaccinated until 6 months.
So actually, the Massachusetts general law requires vaccination at 6 months and 1 day.
Right.
And I spoke to 2 vets who said dogs can be vaccinated as early as 3 months.
Right, but now required to 6 months. The dog was 5 months old at the time of the attack.
And was over 6 months at the time of the hearing on August 9th. So
Correct, yeah.
at the time of the hearing on August 9th, did she represent to you then that the dog had been vaccinated?
That was her testimony, yes.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, did you want, you had raised some concerns about issues or conditions, further conditions?
So beyond the suggested conditions by Mr. Townsend, I wanted to add a provision, were we to accept the, excuse me, report and the suggested
Remedies?
mitigation, to instruct the building commissioner to determine whether or not a business is operating at 5 Azalea Circle, and if so, instruct the owner to have a DBA filed. There were additional,
If I may add to that,
Hold on, let's capture that first.
so there were additional concerns that I had, but they would not be relevant if the dog is not physically present there. And I move we postpone the acceptance or continue this hearing to the next meeting until we can find out if the dog is resident. And just trying to figure out why rabies in Idaho and scheduling and neutering that's not with the vet in Framingham.
yeah, I'd also,
Let me follow up on that, is that really has to be sort of the clarifying conditions for coming back at the next meeting. If we continue to the next meeting, it has to establish that the dog is in town still, that they will initiate discussions with the building department as far as registering as a kennel. My understanding is it would have to go as a special permit to the planning board, so you need to get on their agenda. That's not a condition of accepting that report, but I want to see progress on that. Then there's another item which I'm forgetting.
So with regard to a kennel license, according to our current zoning laws, a commercial kennel license for breeding can only be zoned with a special permit in Commercial 2. And there's one other one. This residence is in RSA, I believe. And so a commercial breeding, even with a special permit's not available for this property for a commercial breeding.
Right. The only thing
Business.
that's available is a home occupation kennel, which is substantially smaller.
up to 4 dogs.
Or dogs, right?
If I can, I guess, just
Go ahead.
quickly, I guess,
Sure.
clarify a few things, but also for myself, clarification. One, this right now is not a hearing, so it's just an agenda item, so it doesn't need to be continued. It can just be
Postponed.
not acted on.
Not acted
And then
on.
it can be added to a future agenda by the chair.
Okay.
So just for clarification for anybody who's watching, this is not a hearing. It's not a public hearing. It's strictly an agenda item. To the items related to the status of business or not at 5 Azalea, permit or not, are distinct and separate from the hearing officer's report itself, and those can happen independent of, because they're really an
Yes.
enforcement item, so those can happen independent of a decision or what's happened or what's being reviewed tonight by the board from the hearing officer. So it doesn't need to be a special condition, it's just something
Right.
that we can certainly do.
Yes.
Just want to clarify that as well, and we have done that, and we'll continue to do that.
Very good.
And if I may, Mr.
ahead, Mr.
Chairman,
Townsend.
the one other clarification that I did ask her about whether this dog was part of, she was breeding this dog at the premises, and her response was, no, this is just my pet, and it's not for sale, and it's not for breeding, it's just a pet. That was her testimony at the hearing.
So separate and apart from this decision, in addition to asking the building inspector to determine whether a business is being conducted at 5 Azalea, I would also like the ACO to be instructed to go to the house, and if the dog is there, I think they can write a citation for not having the dog licensed and registered with the town as of 6 months of age. The dog is now 8 months.
George has
Fair
got his
point.
hand up.
Mr. Richards.
Yes, thank you, members of the board. I just wanted to, for information, excuse me, my client did file a permit or an application for a kennel with the planning board shortly after this occurred at the direction of the dog officer. And it was deemed inadequate and it was basically rejected, but I did have a phone conference with both the building commissioner and the director of community development that we were going to hold off until this decision was made before we filed the full application. So we totally intend to do that. We didn't know what the decision was going to be. We still don't, I guess, but we have committed to pursue that if that option's available under the bylaws. So I just want you to know that.
Thank you, Mr. Richards. Mr. Erickson, can you comment on the viability of that application?
I can confirm that I know an application was attempted to be filed. I have not confirmed the status.
Okay.
I just wasn't prepared for that tonight.
I
fair
did
enough.
confirm that earlier, that it was deemed insufficient.
Which typically means there's a component of the application that is not filed that's a required component of the application.
Well, that's the thing, is whether it's a requirement of the application process or whether it's a limit of the bylaw prohibiting.
That was unclear.
Yeah, that's where I'm seeking clarity.
But it doesn't mean.
We'll pursue it.
Okay,
Thank you.
fair enough, that's fine. Mr. Sidney.
Yeah, so all of these actions that Ms. Coughlin is talking about in some way seem independent of whether we confirm the decision of the hearing officer or not. There are conditions that, if we confirm it, those conditions about, leaving the property, repairing the gate, muzzling the dog, et cetera, would take effect upon, confirmation of the findings. So I agree wholeheartly with following up, making sure that they are legally a kennel or are doing the right things to become a kennel, or are, do the right things if they can't become a kennel. Get the dog licensed, get the ACO out there to issue a citation if the dog isn't licensed and vaccinated. All of those things can happen independently, I think, of approving this hearing finding. I think it behooves us, in order to impose those conditions, to approve the finding and then continue to follow up to make sure that the property owner is compliant with our laws.
Yeah, well, let me just play a hypothetical here. If we do accept that, and we see, where I have trouble with that logic is if we accept the report today, can we talk about it at a subsequent meeting to talk about whether the conditions have been met or not met? Is that?
Well, the enforcement of the conditions would then go to an administrative function of staff or really the ACO
The ACO,
primarily. there might be a couple things that might, actually mostly the ACO in this case.
Yes. Yep.
The board can likely seek status updates from the ACO, certainly
Right.
through town administration. We can certainly make that a point to do that. And that can likely be an agenda item.
Okay. Can I,
Tonight, you can go back and re-review the report and choose to adjust conditions. That I'd have to confirm with legal counsel.
yeah, I think, just again, playing this forward, I'd like to get this approved or tonight if we can, with the proviso that we can get the animal control officer back in and ask the questions, or even if it's just an email confirmation that says, yep, they did that, they did this, these conditions, and then we don't have to spend more time on this than we need to. I think Mr. Townsend has already invested quite a bit of time.
No.
Chasing his tail. No,
I need
won't
him
say
back
that.
on the budget.
Yeah, it's getting to budget season, so I just want to give,
I'd also like to get, follow up, status updates from the building commissioner and, as to
Yeah.
the status of any permits, because if there's more than 4 dogs there, there's a problem. And I want to make sure that I just like to hear that gets cleaned up.
That can certainly be reported back. That is also a similar enforcement issue that would be handled by the building commissioner. I will say that I have had correspondence with the CED director on the permit application for the planning board, and a reason why it was deemed insufficient was because it was not determined that it was, in her words, it was challenging to understand what was being applied for, meaning kennel, business, or otherwise. And depending on what the answer is, we'll determine whether or not it's compliant with zoning.
It is or
So that
not,
was
yeah.
a component of that application discussion.
So I have a point of clarification. Mr. Erickson, you said that, if I heard you correctly, of course, I'm not challenging any of the findings of fact or the discussion or the decision. The order, the remedial actions to safeguard the community, there's a list of orders. Are you saying that you would have to check with legal counsel if I wanted to, say, amend paragraph 8, that the owner shall, within 1 year, change that to 6 months from the date of this order, provide written certification from a professional dog behavioralist?
So if you vote to accept the hearing officer's report and decision tonight, and let's say in 3 months you wanted to re-review the decision and amend a condition, or that process, I don't know. I'd have to confirm that with legal counsel. I don't know if, John, you're familiar with the law to know if they can review your decision at a future date once they've taken action on that.
Or can we amend it
or
tonight?
can we, and that's
Or
what I
can you
was-
amend it tonight?
You can amend it tonight if you'd like to, if you want to change it from 1 year to 6 months.
My point is, if you render a decision tonight,
Yeah.
and that is a decision that includes all of those conditions, or an amended condition, or none of those conditions,
Right.
can in 3 months' time, 1 week time, that's what I don't know. How does that, is there a
I'm
process
not
for that to
asking-
come back in front of the board?
Yeah, that's not,
That was my point.
okay, so that's understood.
Okay.
I think,
I was going
okay with
to
that?
make a motion, move to accept it its entirety, amending only paragraph 8 to change within 1 year to within 6 months from the date of the order.
Okay, that's moved by Ms. Coughlin. Do I have a
Second.
second?
And in discussion,
Yes, please.
I find it very disturbing that the town does not have provisions for a dog breeder or requires certification from the state to be a dog breeder, that we have dog breeding. And I understand that the facility is beautiful, that it meets all the needs for ethical dog breeding, but we have 3 dogs that are licensed as of today at the house, and if RV is destined to come back to the house and be a pet, that's 4, and there are other dogs at the house. I'm bothered that the dog is not licensed. I mean, it was 6 months. I'm bothered that the rabies vaccination took so long to get done. I'm bothered that there was a representation that rabies vaccination had already taken place. I hate to punish RV with having to wear, however comfortable, a muzzle out of the house because of what I perceive to be, based on the documents we reviewed and determination finding, and my discussions with the animal control officer, that the dogs may have not had much interaction with humans. So for all of these reasons, I just want to go on record as saying that I find it really troublesome. I think Mr. Townsend did a fantastic job at finding it at threading a thin needle and making sure that the public is protected and the dog is trained and that the owner of the dog is not unduly burdened. And that's a hard needle to thread. And I think he did a fantastic job. I agree that I think he needs to get back on the budget and we should stop spending time on this. I think that we can ask for updates from Mr. Erickson, from the building inspector, and also whether I do want to know that the dog is living there. That's something I want to know.
Yeah, I'm going to ditto all of that and just add that I am very concerned that we didn't know that there was effectively a kennel operating, and that based on, frankly, a 5-month-old dog should be better trained than that, which means that the owner, as ethical as they're trying to be, isn't actually taking care of the dogs. And that bothers me. So I'm very concerned about that as well. I think that I want to hear back that, if it is a kennel, if it's an illegal kennel, that it's shut down, or that it gets appropriate permits. And I want to hear that all the dogs are properly vaccinated and licensed, and not just RV. RV is just a symptom of the problem, frankly. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sidney. Any other thoughts? Ms. Poe?
I do have one thought. Again, Mr. Townsend, thank you. Thank you for all of your hard work. Everything that you have said in the remediation is in regards to the owner, taking active care to vaccinate, get the proper permits, provide certification and things like that. Potentially, I think it's get the dog trained. Is there anything does anyone have any thoughts about the person who is the owner, and do they need to go through any kind of training, or do they need to have any remediation? Because most of this is through them to the dog or the pet or the service that they're, the system that they have set up. But what about them? Because some of these details then question the credibility of this person.
So the statute itself is geared towards the training and taking care of the actual dog itself. So obviously, the owner has to train the dog, the owner has to get the license. The only thing that's sort of like personal to the owner itself is that, we can require them to get insurance specifically for this particular type of item. And that is something I did. But otherwise, the statute is very sort of dog focused and doesn't really sort of provide for providing additional training for the human or anything with regards to the person itself.
And the town has no bylaws requiring breeders to have certifications or guidelines or anything that we would enforce.
Is it governed by state law? Is that what it is?
Or we could have a town bylaw, but we don't.
But we don't. Right.
Correct, we do not.
I'm sorry.
I just said correct, we do not have a town bylaw. The only thing we have is a section of the zoning bylaw that deals with kennels, and that is broken out both by zoning district and by definition.
Okay.
I think Paul has
Okay, so Paul.
Yeah, only the ditto, and again, just given the extraordinary nature of this, the time and the care, I just want to loudly ditto the balance that you showed, and I think fairness in this process, so thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Jost. So we have a motion to accept the report
With the
with
amendment.
the change from, in paragraph 8, from 1 year to 6 months. And that was made by Ms. Coughlin and seconded by Mr. Sidney. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
500. Again, thank you so much, Mr.
Thanks,
Townsend.
John.
This is very balanced and fair. So thank you again.
Thank you very much.
Okay, moving on to,
Mr. Chairman, we have at least one person online who's interested in the Dam Park update.
yep, you're reading my mind. I'm about to go
Perfect.
to G. We also have Travis Farley sitting in here, who coincidentally will be the point person leading that discussion. So we're going to skip ahead to item G, public engagement process for the South Natick Park system. Mr. Farley.
Thank you very much for allowing me to slide up in the agenda.
Is the mic on?
Yeah, I don't think the mic's
No, is the
on.
mic on?
Mic is not
Is the light on?
on. Green light.
My apologies.
There you go.
Thank you for letting me slide up on the agenda. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I'm here today to update you all on the climate resilient park system on the Charles River in South Natick, the engagement plan that we plan on doing during this process. As we said, as we came here initially, we would like to make every effort to keep the board involved and updated as we move forward through this process. So we just wanted to, as we move forward in the process during this first phase, we just wanted to keep everybody in the loop. Next slide. Just a point of reference, I think it's always going to be an important thing to emphasize what area we're talking about. Obviously, the South Natick Dam Park, the Grove Park, the South Natick Multi-Purpose Court, and the Honeywell baseball fields. I know these are a couple different parcels, but we really do consider these a park system, all-encompassing. We are, important note of clarification as well, Honeywell baseball fields, I know there's some concern, or probably would be concern on Little League sides, that the field would be encompassed in this park system and updates. We would really like to note that those updates are going to be more stormwater related and how it impacts the river, not really field updates. And so that shouldn't be any really concern about this park project as well. Yeah, so that's it with that section as well. So moving forward, and again, I know it was easy to look at the GIS map, but I thought it would be an important element to just look at the satellite map and how this looks and how this lays out as well. Moving forward to the timeline, we're really looking for a November to June timeline. As we move forward, we kind of broken this out in 5 different phases as we move through November into June. The first point will be an input session. We're going to be looking at the complete existing conditions analysis, so what conditions we're looking at. This will be also a point where we have that initial outreach to key stakeholders, so the local indigenous partners or communities. We're going to look at abutters as well. We're going to make that first initial outreach to them as point people as well to get that input from. And like we said initially when we came here the first time, if you look at this, every step of the way, community engagement is going to be a very important piece of this puzzle. We want to interact with the community as much as we can. We want to get as much feedback as we can as well. Moving forward to January 2024, we are going to be conducting an open house. Again, that'll be a review of conditions. We'll have a present site considerations, opportunities, and limitations. And obviously at that point, we'll be seeking public feedback and also engaging key stakeholders as well. February, March timeframe, we're going to have hopefully a presentation of options. We're going to present that initial schematic design. We're going to be looking at concepts and options as well. And again, this will be based off of the input and open house sections over that November to January timeframe. Obviously, that'll weigh pretty heavily on the schematic design as well. And again, at that point, we're going to be seeking public feedback and engaging with key stakeholders. April, May, we're going to be hopefully looking at a community event slash site walk. We thought this was a really unique opportunity to not only engage with the public and get interactive feedback, but try to take advantage of our rec and park background and make it a little more family friendly as well. We're going to host a family friendly event with concepts and locations and hopefully get some really good interactive feedback from the community as well at the site. and then hopefully wrapping it up in June with a design, draft schematic design and presentation, and again, seeking public feedback and stakeholder feedback as well. And that's kind of the timeline moving forward. And then last but not least, just some engagement opportunities that we hope to check off is meeting plan updates and shared with various distribution lists. We're going to look at flyers, direct communications, and possibly mailings as well. We're going to have a unique URL, very similar to the dam removal website, where it's going to provide updates to the community that they can go towards for any kind of community engagement, park design updates that we have. And then we're hopefully going to be engaging the public during community events such as the Farmers Market, Earth Day, some bigger community events that we have coming up in the winter and spring as well. And then obviously we're going to be doing regular check-ins both here and we're going to be doing quarterly updates here, and then as well as at the Rec and Park Commission, which meets monthly as well. And that is the updates that I have for right now, and I will open it up for questions as well.
Mr. Joyce?
Thank you, and thanks for the update, Mr. Farley. It's really exciting. I think that was one of the, when we made the decision to breach the dam and look at opportunities here. This is a great step forward. I especially appreciate the frequency of public engagement and the sort of various channels you're pursuing and ways to integrate that communication. So thank you for being so thoughtful and putting this together. One question I have, just, and I don't know if it's a practical one, and if maybe it's premature, but as I look at the map on page 2, and I brought this up when we were discussing the RFP process for 5 Auburn Street. I understand the steepness and I understand the challenges of Auburn Street, but you know, I felt like there was an opportunity there with what we talked about, having public access to the Charles River as a possibility, or at least a terminus somewhere that would allow for its future consideration. Was that discussed at all in looking at the scope of this? And again, one thought I had, you know, just in terms of keeping access to the parks shorter and frankly a more enjoyable possibility, maybe a footbridge or something like that, or is there a way to incorporate the potential public access on the 5 Auburn Street side with this study?
You want to take that, or?
Yeah, you and mine. You get the history there. I apologize.
I mean, on the 5 Auburn Street side, it's a little bit separate and distinct from this project. This project is focused really on the resiliency of this park system because it is through a grant from the state, but we do want to look at park design. I definitely would welcome public comment and encouragement for somehow incorporating river access into the park system. That obviously had to be looked at from a compliance and from like a Concom perspective, but even in the early iterations of that work that has already been done included some type of access point. Now, where, how many is a big question. I think we need to understand that more, what's possible. That's why I think the second phase has that considerations component. You know, the design team is going to be looking at this, and there's going to be limitations just based on physical location of wetlands, location of existing facilities, location of future facilities that will help us, and just the physical landscape to help us determine what can and cannot happen where. You know, some areas will be identified, we can be more active here, we have to be less active here, this is more passive, just by the nature of what they are. So that's why it's key to get that existing condition analysis done, because that'll help inform. We might want a footbridge or a canoe launch here or an access point here, but guess what, we can't do that because of XYZ. So it has to be in these other 3 locations. Which one do we want to pick? So that's part of that community engagement and the existing condition analysis.
Thank you.
Good explanation. Thank you. All set? Mr. Sidney?
Yeah, I really thank you very much. I've had communication from a couple of citizens who've reached out about, you know, what's going to happen as we breach the dam, breach the spillway, and you know, as I said when we took that vote, and I'm going to continue to say, I want to make sure, and I know citizens want to make sure, that we end up with a good quality park where the spillway used to be, that people will feel comfortable sitting in and enjoying the river. So thank you for this. The outreach options are excellent. Let's just make sure we make it easy for people to get on those distribution lists if they're interested. I really appreciate this. This transparency is huge for a project like this, and it needs to be.
Yeah, thank you. I really would like to emphasize, community engagement will be very important as we move through every phase of this process. So we're going to make every effort to get a hold of every community group and outreach as much as we can.
Awesome. Ms. Pope?
I just want, first of all, thank you for the update. And I wanted to just dig just a little bit deeper into the ways in which you're going to communicate. There are clearly some people who are much more vested, fired up about what's going to happen. And, unfortunately, too often, particular groups will say they didn't hear anything, they weren't made aware, they didn't know. And it looks like, your group, this is a multi-pronged process, but I'm just curious as to whether or how you plan to reach certain groups that are really concerned about what's going to happen.
I think getting out there is very important. It's nice to sit back and come up with a plan, but I feel like I can only speak from the Rec and Park side, and I've only a year into Natick, but I've had success in the past with getting a hold of community feedback, with just getting out, going to community events, doing outreach to schools on different things. So I think putting feet to pavement and getting out and interacting with the public has been successful, and that's something that I'm hoping we can do, and being at community events as much as we can, just to interact with the public. Because you're right, getting out there and putting it on social media, putting it on the internet, making websites nice and all, but it's always a hard task to get a hold of everybody in the community. So I've found that it's been successful for me in the community I was in prior, and I'd like to see that transmit into Natick, is just trying to get out to community events, having a presence at those bigger community events that people gather at. And maybe you can make a connection or two and get a hold of more people that might not know about an open house or might not know about a site walk we're doing, just to get out there as much as you can.
Thank you.
We also have the engagement list from the Dam Advisory Committee work, which I believe has over 500 email addresses as part of it. So that is going to be part of the outreach effort.
Thank you, Jamie. I think that's important.
That's going to be extremely important. Creating a web presence where we can guide through social media, through outreach efforts, get more information here, provide comments here, go through here to get more information, get updated information. That has been extremely successful in my experience for projects in the past that need significant community engagement. Getting people to get used to going to that webpage and getting more updates there is going to be key. But those outreach efforts that we currently have with regards to distribution lists, as well as the engagement through community events and the like, is going to be important.
Thank you.
Mr. Erickson, will the communications director be part of this, developing this plan?
Is or was? The answer to both is yes. Was and is going to be helpful with moving this forward as well.
And just point of clarification, those 500 emails include emails that the board received with regard to the dam process?
We can confirm that. You mean email addresses?
Yes.
Yeah, we didn't necessarily catalog all the emails that came in during the dam process, but the email addresses, we can certainly confirm that.
That's what I meant. The email address, people who wrote in, they have a vested interest, and I'd want to make
100%.
sure that they were included. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Joseph?
Yeah, no, thank you. I mean, I assumed that would be the case, that certainly that group is reachable. What I find interesting is almost the opposite. One of the greatest opportunities we have here is to let folks in other parts of Natick understand we want them to be part of what do we want our part of the Charles River to look like. How will you access it if you live in East Natick? How will you access it if you live in West or North Natick? What is important to you is a potential user that never knew we had that amenity, right? So these are important questions too. And I think in my limited interactions with Keep Natick Beautiful and some folks that have worked on the Cochituate lake area, water resources, we are lucky to have what we have in so many ways, but I think we don't appreciate some of the challenges that we have in supporting and maintaining them, and I think this is a great opportunity to educate people more broadly about what open space amenities we do have, and to engage people that otherwise like I said, because they're not neighbors, might be thinking of. So thank you. That was a great question.
That was a great point, awesome. Just a couple of things, Travis, great work. Very excited about your engagement plan, and as others have said, this was an integral part of the plan when we agreed to breach the dam. It's essential that we replace an iconic area that's has emotional attachments to most of the community and other communities as well. We need to replace that with something that's equally appealing. And at the time, one of the things I had mentioned was what I think is the great opportunity here is to have both sides of the Charles River that are owned by the land really developed. Because of the seasonal flooding issues, they were neglected because it wasn't feasible really to develop them and throw good money after bad in developing it. But now we have the opportunity to rethink that and come up with something really great. So I'm very encouraged by that. One suggestion that I would have is in scheduling the outreach events, let's make it at a time that we can get the best bang for the buck. I don't know what the answer to that question is, but I do know it's probably not midday, middle of the week, but it's probably an evening. It could be a weekend, or it could be a midday on a weekend. But I would say you almost have to ask people what they'd prefer, to understand when you should have the in-depth, like the walkthroughs and things like that, and the site review.
Yeah, we'll try to engage some of the local sports organizations, PTAs, stuff coming up, important community events, and try to schedule it around that work scheduled around their schedules that would be less impact, maybe like a weekend or weekday evening where everybody can make it.
Yeah. Awesome. Good stuff. Anything else, the board? Thank you.
Thank you, Travis.
Thank you
very much, Travis. It's great. Great work. Thank you. Okay, we're going to go back to item D, which is a public hearing on NSTAR Electric doing business as Eversource Energy, grant of location for 13 Tech Circle. Mr. Sidney?
So we have a public hearing notice, Town of Natick Select Board, grant of location, Tech Circle. In conformity with the requirements of Section 70, Chapter 164 of the General Laws, notice is hereby provided that the Select Board of Natick will conduct a public hearing on Wednesday, November 1st, 2023 at 6:30 p.m. at the request of NSTAR Electric Company, DBA Eversource Energy, for obtaining a grant of location to install one new pole, number 584/8A, and one anchor guy pole at number 584/8A. This work is necessary to provide electric service to number 13 Tech Circle. Plans are on file in the Town Administrator's office. The hearing will be held both in person and remotely. Anyone wishing to be heard in this matter can participate in person or in the virtual meeting being held through Zoom. Login instructions will be published on the November 1st, 2023 Select Board agenda. And I move to open the public hearing.
Point of order, Mr. Chair. Prior to a second, sorry to interrupt. I wanted you to read that before interrupting. On the previous agenda item, you noted that there was someone online specifically here for that issue. We didn't ask for comments from the public, and I just wanted to, I can't see the screen easily.
The previous issue.
She did step off. Okay. I just wanted to make sure that there wasn't anything outstanding.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll second Mr. Sidney's motion.
Okay. Open the public hearing was Mr. Sidney and Mr. Joseph. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, then, speaking of people online, I assume
If I could,
somebody,
Mr. Chair, just to present this. So the materials are in your packet in terms of the location. We do have Christine Cosby from...
Do we need roll call? We don't need roll call.
No.
Know that. Thank you. Good. Christine Cosby with Eversource, who is here to explain it. Just to let the board know, this has been reviewed by the engineering department with the town. In your packet, they do have a recommendation on this request. They do not have concerns with the location, but they do have a couple of conditions in there that they just request, which are standard. So I will turn it over to Christine. Let's just unmute her, and she can. Oh, perfect. She's unmuted. So.
You okay with that, Mr. Chair?
Hi, yes, this is,
Welcome, Christine. Thank you for asking.
hi, yes, this is Christine Cosby from Eversource Energy, and we are requesting a grant of location for a new pole 584 over 8A on Tech Circle in Natick. And the purpose of the pole, this new pole would be to provide service to number 13 Tech Circle.
Okay. Questions from the board? No.
Is she comfortable with the
Seems
conditions?
pretty straightforward that the engineering department is in favor of this, and they established the conditions that Mr. Marshall referred to. So I'm looking for a motion to approve.
Motion to approve with the conditions as specified by the town engineer.
Do I have a seconder?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Coughlin. All in favor, say aye.
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 Move to
All
close the
opposed.
public hearing.
Thank you. Moved by Mr. Sidney. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Joseph. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, we're done with that one.
Okay, give me a second to make
Yep.
notes, and then
Clerical
I'll read the
notes.
next
Yeah.
one.
All right.
Okay, public hearing notice.
Let's move to H, give you a little breath here. All right, if you're ready,
I'm ready.
you write fast. Okay, go ahead, Mrs.
Public hearing notice. The Select Board will conduct a public hearing on Wednesday, November 1st, 2023, at 6:30 PM to set the 2024 Select Board licensing fees. The hearing will be held in the Select Board's meeting room, 13 East Central Street, as well as remotely. Anyone wishing to be heard in this matter can participate in person or through Zoom. Login instructions will be published on the November 1st, 2023 Select Board agenda. The current licensing fees can be found at the following link, www.natickma.gov/522/licenses-fees. And I move to open the public hearing.
And I'll second that, because I never get to second anything. Okay, so all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, here we go. Okay, anybody have questions or comments to start the discussion? I know, Ms. Coughlin, you had substantial ideas on this one.
Yeah, I'm not clear what the suggested fee structure is.
So there isn't a suggested one, there's just what is, and then there isn't a suggested fee structure. What we have is a Natick fee history and then a fee survey. So the survey is research that Ms. Donovan collected from comparable and/or surrounding
Communities.
Thank you. And the Natick fee history tells what the fees have been historically, so, from 2017 to 2023. It's worth noting that the Select Board does not have the power to adjust all fees. Apparently, some are determined by
Mass General Law.
and by town meetings. So, for
meeting
example,
through
we
bylaw.
charge $2 for a psychic, and other towns charge 50 or 100, for example. That would require bylaw changing.
And some are by Mass General Law. They're determined by MGL.
Right, so for example, car dealerships, those are determined by Mass General Law.
Okay.
The ones that are mostly under jurisdiction of the Select Board relate to some of the alcohol fees related, like restaurants, all alcohol restaurants with lounge, package stores, other alcohol fees. Those are the ones that are most commonly have historically been reviewed by the board, and where you have some of the most jurisdiction over setting those fees. You'll notice in the license fee history, for a number of years, many years, the fees were pretty much set it was like a set it and forget it situation. And then in 2019, or leading into 2019, there was a comprehensive overhaul of some of the alcohol fees. You'll also notice during the pandemic years, the board chose to reduce the fees. Basically, not all fees, but most fees were reduced by half. And then 2023 last year is when the board chose to basically bring them all back to pre-pandemic levels. Except for, I believe, actually, there might be one that was not.
The hotels,
Club all alcohol was
club
not.
alcohol, right.
And the in-holder all alcohol was also not. So one consideration for tonight is to bring all fees back up to pre-pandemic levels, and then review if you wanted to increase the fees. Another note of historical context, with the updates in 2019, the thinking was that there would be a regular cadence of reviewing the fees, meaning update them maybe a certain percentage annually, so that there isn't just a long period where they stay the same and then you do, bam, a big increase. That was obviously pre-pandemic, and the pandemic caused that to be put on pause and then even be reduced for the all alcohol. That could be a consideration of this board, is to start that process again. Another consideration is to not keep them the same or do something else.
Mr. Sidney, I saw you first.
Yeah, thank you. Just a couple of questions. Do we have any taxi companies actually in Natick?
Yes.
Okay.
JFK falls under that, I believe.
Oh, okay. So even though they're doing mostly livery service, they're also a taxi service?
I believe they fall under that licensing.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I just, I was looking at the non-alcohol license fees and comparing them to other towns, and a couple of them are, they seem to me to be low. Junk dealers, I'm not that concerned about, even though it's lower than Framingham, because, I mean, it's a lot of our small businesses, gold collecting is junk dealing. So I wouldn't want to hit up our jewelers who are trying to make a living. But transient hawkers, I'm happy to raise those fees. When they come into town and they start knocking on doors, I want to make sure that whatever it costs to manage them from a public safety standpoint, that we get enough revenue from them to at least contribute. And in terms of, I'm going to take other people's judgment on, where the alcohol licenses, I don't have any good judgment on those, but I was looking at at some of the others, so thank you.
Jamie, are there any in the Natick town budget, like a specific deficit as related to, or a challenge as related to what we're looking at that we should hone in on and say, this should come up because there's a deficit here, or we're going to run into a deficit?
I guess I need to understand when you mean by deficit. Do you mean like from an enforcement perspective, or from a processing perspective, or from, the town, it's sort of fees are not necessarily designed to 100% pay for the cost it is for the town to support that use. In some cases, our fees might exceed it. In some cases, it doesn't. A good example is we have parking fee revenue from parking fee tickets. That does not cover the cost of actually having the enforcement officers going out there, but it's not necessarily intended to.
Right.
It's intended to have a parking program in Natick Center that then supports the Natick business community. So our other taxes then subsidize that to a certain degree. In the case of fees here, I'm not sure I can answer that question with regards to the budget, because we accept fees in one section of a revenue structure, but then we do enforcement in various other components. So it's not as if we have a very clear, this is directly related to this fee.
Okay, thank
There
you.
aren't like enterprise funds where we can say it's a fee for service.
Thank you.
Mr. Joseph?
Yep, a couple things. I understand Mr. Sidney's point about the hawkers, peddlers, and transient, the two, if it's door to door, but it's also, I remember having this conversation with Mr. Connolly years ago. On the flip side of that, these are also the gold shows and things that come to the hotels, so there's other business that gets done locally as a benefit of that as well. It's not necessarily just a door to door situation. But again, to Mr. Erickson's point, I think these are all fairly nominal. I have no objection to bringing that on par with Framingham. The other thing we should be cognizant of is, although it's not passed yet, the seating capacity changes that were approved at town meeting last fall. So right now we've got the minimum of 100 for on-premises alcohol, and we need to think about what happens if a space with 20 seats would like to have a boutique sort of a niche restaurant or something like that, that wants to come in. How much do we want to scale it down as opposed to keep it flat?
And do we want to have a range that, let's say, goes from, well, let's just say like 10 to 50 and then 50 to 99 or whatever?
We were considering adding it to, we did have a version of this that actually had it in there, but since it's not officially on the books yet, we felt it prudent just to keep this to what's technically on the books. More because we didn't want people to think there was an actual license available. So we and the board can certainly, once we get that, assuming we get it through the state legislative process, hold another public hearing at that time to review that fee structure.
Yeah, that makes sense.
One thing to note about the alcohol fees is we are showing anyway that the tiered structure that the town adopted in 2019 is relatively unique, I think in a positive way, and keeps us relatively on par, if not above, a lot of our neighbors in area. I don't want to say competing, but comparable communities.
Yeah.
The only one that after looking at the survey of the history and surrounding communities, the only one that I had any strong feeling about was, in terms of increasing or decreasing, was the package store for wine and malt. We've held that pretty steady from the pandemic through now, and it's nominally above what it was in 2019. But I didn't have a number in mind.
But if you look at that with the comparables, it's with other communities, it's significantly above that. Well,
What's
anywhere from like 300 to 1,000.
Some are below, some are 2,000.
Yeah, Wellesley, Westwood are higher, Braintree's higher, Burlington's higher, Franklin's higher than ours, Norwood's higher, and so is Foxborough.
Yep. Okay. I need a bigger screen or a smaller font or better eyes.
Ditto.
I need all the above.
Ditto.
Okay.
I can't even read my notes on this.
How about the common vic license? Is that something that we would want to look at? Because that to me is just, it seems like,
Well, it's in line with, it's a little higher than everybody else.
yeah, it's a little higher, but, if we're looking to, I don't know, I was kind of thinking out loud on that one, is would it be worthwhile to putting it under 100 just for perception point of view? I don't know.
In my opinion, no. I think it's nominal. $25 is not going to make a difference if you're locating a restaurant and we're competing with Framingham. I'll take our geography over that $25 any day of the week. So
Yeah.
That's kind of where I was headed, but I just wanted to validate it. Okay.
But that said, I do think, these other licenses you were referencing, and I think Mr. Erickson's guidance in terms of thinking about incremental increases to keep up with sort of a progression as opposed to a large step function over several years makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So of the categories, are there ones that we want to increase?
Well, regardless, I would like to see the hawkers fee increased. Just because I think it's just too low. And it hasn't gone up since 2017.
Okay. You have a number?
You know, what did I see? Framingham was at, on that one. I was
250.
looking at that a minute ago. Framingham's at 250. You know, it's 125 now. If we went to
You're right.
maybe 175,
Okay.
you know, I'm open to,
Yeah, I do 175 or 200.
yeah.
Mr. Erickson, I have a question. Do you have a sense of how many hawkers permits are pulled in a year?
I do not have a sense. I'd have to confirm that.
Okay.
Sorry.
And Mr. Joseph, could you say a little bit more about that license being used? Is it used for conventions?
Yeah, so sometimes, like a wholesaler will rent out a hotel space to do their presentations, their jewelry sale. They might do a jewelry purchase event or do some retailing locally, so that would fall under this category. So
There are a number of those a year that we're aware of in town.
And that was, I remember in debate 10 years ago, we were talking about how this hawkers hurt local businesses, but in that particular case, having those helps the local business as well, the hotel. So it's it's not an intuitive thing. But again, these are small dollars. I don't think it's arbitrary. It's 175, 200. To me, 200 seems reasonable because we're going to be on par with a hotel that's going to be across the border that's charging 250. And
Right.
That's what we're competing with a with a show
Yeah,
like
and these
that.
are profitable, those things are profitable events. I mean, it's not like the extra $75 is going to put them out of business.
Right.
It might keep some of the door-to-door salesmen
Yep.
from bothering a lot of homeowners, especially if they're near scams.
I don't think they bother to get them.
Well, that's true.
I was gonna
Exactly.
say.
I just think they leave the neighborhood when somebody calls the police.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, my door's knocked on at least twice a week for solar panels, at least twice a week. And they don't have the ID that's required by the police department. I'm not sure that putting it up to 250 is going to make them say, oh, we ought to go over to Wellesley because they don't have a permit fee.
All right, so we're agreed on changing that to 200. Are there any other changes we want to make?
It seems like, based on what you said and based on the competition, Ms. Coughlin, that the fortune teller should be raised.
Can't do it. You need a
Can't do it
bylaw,
without town meeting.
Town
Okay.
meeting
But
sets that
yes, that
Oh,
should be
okay.
something we should look at in our next town meeting.
for the one person in town who
All right.
is,
Well, then, yeah. I knew you were going to say that. Sorry. Couldn't resist.
I'm going to charge you.
Exactly. And then the club license, we kept pre-pandemic. What was that prior? What was the number? I'm trying
It
to,
was $1,000.
was 1,000 prior?
Yeah.
Yep, it's on the history spreadsheet as well.
Yeah, no, I know.
Yep.
I'm jumping around here. Okay, there it is.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, my inclination is to go back to pre-pandemic
Yeah.
on those licenses, with those that were cut and held. At this point, I think the economy has proven its resilience.
Yeah.
So basically, all licenses back to pre-pandemic.
At minimum, yeah.
So we say 2019 fees.
Yeah. Well, does that work for all cases, I'm wondering?
Well, I think we say all licenses that haven't been, that are lower than 2019 be
Yes.
raised to 2019.
That's fair. Does everybody agree on that?
Sorry.
It's kind of odd. General on premises went up $10 from what it was in 2019. I don't know.
So that was part of that regular 2019 to 2020 pre-pandemic still. The idea at that time was to do regular increases of $10 or $20 depending on the fee. So from 2019 to 2020, that is what you're seeing in some of those increases. So if you notice, for
I see.
example, restaurants, all alcohol with lounge, 100 to 150 seat capacity went from $4,200 to $4,225.
Right.
And then the thinking was each year or every couple years you would raise another $25 or another $20 or what have you. That way over time it builds instead of,
So,
but then the pandemic hit and that's when everything changed.
so
Yeah.
it might make sense to make the baseline year 2020, because that's when you started doing the incremental changes, and looking at that, most of the figures for 2023 are aligned with that number.
Does that make sense to you, Paul?
Yeah, yep, yes, it does.
And then I'd say we come back next year and look at those, start looking at those incremental increases again.
Yep.
I mean, I'm curious, and Ms. Coughlin is a former package store owner, rather than incremental, $20, $25 seems arbitrary as opposed to 1%, having some variable plugged in there, which reflects the cost of business. I mean, when it comes to alcohol licenses, I want to tread lightly because we want to keep an attractive destination for these businesses. The 20 or 25 bucks seems arbitrary versus having some kind of peg at half inflation or something like that. Does that, 1% doesn't even touch inflation, but to me, it doesn't seem unreasonable. But curious about that from a business
One
owner's
thing,
perspective.
and we were trying to get clarity on this from the state. I believe you were on
We
the
talked to
phone call.
Ralphie.
Okay.
Yeah, so one of the questions I had was, can we change our package store our tier structure from square feet to revenue? So Ms. Donovan and I spoke with Mr. Sacramone, who's the executive director of the ABCC. And he said, gosh, I don't think you can do that. I think we have a rule about that. I'll let you know. And then he called back and said that the fee structure is found in Chapter 138, Section 12, which it's not. It's found in Section 15. And all it says is the fees are chosen by the select board or the executive of the town or the city. So rather than, Total Wine it's been said many times in the industry, Total Wine has more lawyers than they have wine tasters. Rather than incurring the wrath of Total Wine, let's keep it at the square footage. Most of our stores are up to 3,000 feet or between 3,000 and 6,000 feet. I don't think we have any that are between 6,000 and 15,000. That having been said, the jump between 6,000 and 15,000 and 15,000 plus is relatively modest. It's $500.
Yeah,
so
right.
I'm agnostic on it.
Yeah. Can live with that.
One approach, probably not for this round, but something for consideration for a future round is, for example, package store all alcohol, but it could theoretically the similar be applied to restaurant seating, especially if the full authority gets to the board after the home rule petition, is to tie it to, in the case of, for example, an all alcohol store, is just the square footage, meaning 50 cents per square foot, and just make it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Your square footage determines your fee. Therefore, the smaller footprints pay a little bit less. Larger footprints pay more.
I like that a lot.
Yeah.
Similar
And those are easy to
X
percentage
per
increase,
seat.
too.
Sure. I like those a lot. The
I
square
haven't.
footage is declared on the license application every year, and so they have to map all that out, so they wouldn't be including the kitchen and the bathroom, and
Right.
it would be,
There's already a noted
Yes.
square footage.
right, we wouldn't have to do anything with that.
That's perfect.
I think that's great for next year.
Or would the owner have to do anything additional?
Nope, let's just submit it, and then we tell him what his fee is.
Financial calculation necessary.
Yeah, I like that a lot, Mr. Erickson.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Well, I want to be cautious here. I was listening to a webinar yesterday about cases in front of the Supreme Court.
Yes.
And one of them is about fee structures have to be, whether fee structures have to be related to what's being covered. I think the square footage thing actually works, but we want to watch that decision before we radically change anything.
Well, we're not doing that this year.
No, it's just a caveat as we think about this stuff.
So do we have a motion as to what we want to do?
Thank you.
Yeah, I
I
got,
just had to jump in, Bruce.
Hey,
yeah.
appreciate it.
Move to increase hawkers licenses to 200, and all other licenses which are lower than 2020 should be raised to 2020 levels.
Do I have a second?
2019?
No, we
2020.
decided 2020 because that was the same as most of the 2023 ones, if not all. And there was a very minor change from 2019 to 2020.
And just, I guess, why don't we put the motion on the table in discussion, I do have a question, but that's fine.
All right, do I have a second?
I'll
Se-
second. All right, go ahead.
Second,
Ms.
for purposes of discussion.
Yeah, thank you. So just given that, Ms. Coughlin, you had raised a concern or satisfaction that the 15,000 square foot plus is reasonable, or do you feel like that would be something we should look at as a possible expansion, understanding the lawyer? I mean, what's interesting to me is I know we're not prepared to necessarily do this variable rate, but that's a relatively easy calculation to make. We just take our total revenue divided by total square feet right now and come up with that number. You know, is that beyond the realm of possibilities for this board at this point? I also want to get things done, so I appreciate the need to keep moving. So,
I think my only question would be, what would be the reaction from
I would want more analysis.
yeah, okay.
legal
that's fine.
counsel? as
And we
well?
are, I haven't convened it yet, but that's the follow-up on the licensing was on off-premise discussion with the licensing in general. So there'll be a chance to interact with those license holders as we look at our regulations. That was one of my to-dos, hopefully going into the winter after town meeting, was to convene that group again and start looking at the licenses themselves, so we can have this as part of the discussion. Thank you.
Good.
So I would propose an amendment if you're open to it,
I'll
Mr.
take it
Sidney.
friendly.
Yeah, it's friendly.
So far.
So far. For the exception being the package store wine malt to $1,250.
Well, why don't we just say that he's already called that the hawker, and let's add that and say the package, sorry, I didn't get the exact verbiage.
The package store wine/malt
Okay,
would be
$1,200, go to
$50, $12.50.
$12.50, okay. So now we have a three-ring circus, which is the hawker, the package store, wine and malt to $12.50, and everything else that's lower than 2020 gets raised to the 2020 levels.
So I guess I have a concern about that, just in terms of the spirit of what that would, how that might affect. Like, so one of the reasons we have the malt and wine license is to encourage potentially boutique retail, right, to have it. And that number puts us higher than any other community, it looks like, comparative, based on, as I'm just kind of doing a quick scan. Whereas I also, in talking to a couple of potential applicants for that kind of license, my sense is their square foot dedicated for that product, given the mix of other things they'll be carrying, might be relatively low. So is the thinking behind raising it to support current package stores and reduce the risk of competition?
Yeah, I'll withdraw that. I would note that other towns are higher than ours for the package. So Framingham's higher, it's 3,000 in Needham. But we have discussed in economic development the
Oh, I'm
pursuing
sorry.
of.
I'm stuck on the other table. Thank you.
That's okay. So, yeah, we have discussed going after boutique, and frankly, the amount of money that's going to generate, I think we've already spent on Mr. Erickson's and Mr. Marshall's time tonight. So I will withdraw that
Okay,
from my
so-
friendly amendment.
Okay, so,
So we're back to $200 for hawkers, and all other licenses lower than 2020 are raised to the 2020 levels. And that was made by Mr. Sidney and seconded by Ms. Coughlin. All in favor, please say aye.
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 All right, moving along. Okay. Mr. Sidney,
Is it resolution time?
proclamation,
Can I ask that you,
resolution.
can I just ask that you close the public hearing?
Thank you.
Oh, yes, move to close the public hearing.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Who seconded?
It was Kristen. We'll give it to Kristen.
Let's give it to you.
They're debating it, and Bruce.
I heard
The
Catherine.
referee. All right, yeah, all right. We'll give it to Catherine.
Things over
And it was you who did the motion, right?
Yeah, okay, so I just got to make,
Close public hearing.
okay, so we're going to give
Thank you,
it, second to
Jamie.
Catherine?
Yep. Sure. Yeah, I will blame her.
Okay. Just going to keep my notes in line with yours.
Yeah, all right. Your notes are much better, I'm sure. Mine are scribbles. All right,
Okay.
on to the proclamation.
Okay, blah. It is 9:20. Natick Select Board resolution in honor of the 150th anniversary of the Natick Historical Society. Whereas the Natick Historical Society was founded in 1870 and incorporated as the Historical Natural History and Library Society of South Natick in 1873. Whereas on March 2nd, 1872, its initial collections were destroyed in a fire that burned much of the heart of South Natick, the largest fire in Natick history at that time. Whereas Oliver Bacon, a leading citizen and benefactor, and his wife Sarah willed a portion of their estate to erect a suitable fireproof building in South Natick for use and occupation of a public library and also the Museum of the Historical and Natural History Society of South Natick. Whereas the building was designed by Robert and George Saw and is listed on the National Register of Historic Places. Whereas for 150 years, the Natick Historical Society has been a historic, cultural, and educational resource for the community members, scholars, and youth through its programs, exhibitions, and research services. Whereas the Natick Historical Society partners with over a dozen local organizations each year to provide a wide range of free public programs. Whereas the Natick Historical Society brings local history into the community by participating in local events, including Natick Days, Maple Magic, and Multicultural Day, and contributing to historical signage in town, most notably a series of historical panels on Natick's section of the Cochituate Rail Trail, and offers an increasing number of talks and tours for students in local schools and universities, including an annual series of field trips with Natick's 500 third graders. Whereas its internship, fellowship, and volunteer programs include more than 24 people of all ages working in collections, cataloging, and public programs. Whereas since 2016, the Natick Historical Society has offered an annual scholarship to a graduating Natick High School senior selected by the members of the high school's history and civics faculty. Whereas the Natick Historical Society is one of the oldest local historical societies in Massachusetts and has remained an independent nonprofit that thrives on the generosity of donors and grantors and receives no municipal funds. Now, therefore, the Natick Select Board congratulates the Natick Historical Society on its 150th birthday as one of Natick's cherished institutions. In witness thereof, we have hereunto set our hands and caused the seal of the town of Natick to be affixed this first day of November 2023, and I so move.
I'll second that. Any questions or objections? All in favor, please say aye.
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 And we'll get a nice clean copy that we'll sign later.
Yes, we'll get the official scripty one. Donna will put together for us and we can sign. One thing, Mr. Erickson, I do want to have happen, that they're having their 150th birthday party this Sunday, the 5th. So if we could have that available for us to sign, so I can give that to them on that day. Is that possible?
It can, as long as people can come in and sign it, unless you want electronic signatures on it.
I prefer, are we okay to, can folks come in to sign?
Yeah, we can try to get this prepared. You were working with Donna on this one, or?
Yeah, I sent it to Joan and Donna.
Okay.
So they have the...
We can prep it tomorrow morning. Yep.
Good. Awesome. Now I can go
Chair?
home.
Mr. Chair, could I suggest that each member of the board let you know by email that it's been signed so you know when to pick it up?
Thank you. You're an ambitious lad.
Make you come to town.
Okay.
Everybody but Kristen, Paul, you're going to be there tomorrow night, right?
Of course.
The only one that's not going to be there is Kristen.
She wouldn't miss it for them.
Maybe she can deliver it. Stop by the office before going to town meeting, Kristen, drop it off.
All right, moving on to item H, vote to rescind special speed regulation number 7678 for Walnut Street northbound and Walnut Street southbound. And Mr. Erickson, do you want to give a very brief
Sure, just briefly, this is a redo of the speed limit regulations that the board adopted a number of months ago that has also been a topic of conversation the last couple of months. When we continued to seek an update from Mass DOT, we learned that apparently the language we use was not consistent with what they needed. We said that we wanted to change the speed limit, and it needed to say we wanted to rescind the speed limit. This one is specific to the Walnut Street area. Next meeting, and we just lack of oversight didn't add that there's actually two that we need to revote. This is just Walnut. Next meeting, you'll see the next one, which is Pleasant Street. So simply revote, and then we can resubmit.
Okay, so we,
voted it once before, we have to vote the new language.
Yeah.
right, so we,
And we've confirmed multiple times with DOT that this is the right language.
so we need to have a vote, have two votes. That
Well-
one that rescinds. Oh, thank you, I'm sorry.
Well,
Thank you.
right now, it's just one vote. Next meeting, we'll have the next one for you.
Okay.
There
but
were
we
two
don't have to
streets that you voted months ago. We meant to put both on this town meeting, on this town.
No, I was just
on this meeting.
confused
We
about-
missed. We'd only put one, so we'll get the next one on next meeting.
Do we need to read what we're voting out loud?
Yeah,
Okay, you want me to read?
I can do that.
Are we reading the DOT letter? I'm sorry, are we reading the DOT letter?
The letter really just confirms the vote of the board.
Oh, okay.
So
we
it
don't
just
need-
needs a motion
Just
to
needs a
rescind the
motion to
special
rescind.
speed
Yep.
regulation number 7678 for Walnut Street. Is that sufficient for the
Correct.
DOT?
Yep.
Yep.
Well, there's your motion.
Moved by Ms.
Second.
Coughlin, seconded by Mr. Sidney. All in favor, say aye.
I have a quick.
I'm sorry, question?
In discussion, no. go
Yeah,
ahead.
I have a quick question. What is the process, how long does it take to resubmit?
Upon the vote, we will get a letter into them within the next couple days.
Okay.
And then their process, this is our Natick first time doing this, so I can't speak to exactly how long it takes them to process these.
Has the speed limit already been changed?
No,
No, because we have to
Because
have the authority to do so.
Okay,
This is,
I can tell you it has not. It's right
Yeah.
around the corner from me.
Now,
okay.
and actually, I have another question as soon as you're done.
How long after, so,
Yeah.
but you said this is your first time? This is your
this
first
is
time
the
doing this,
town's
so you don't
first
know.
time doing this type of rescinding of speed limits.
Mm-hmm.
The town only adopted the right to do this 4 years ago, I want to say, by town meeting.
4 years,
And these were the first two streets that we were seeking to do this on.
Okay,
So once we submit it to Mass DOT, they go through a process, mostly a paperwork process, but I can't speak to how long that will take. Hopefully, it's a minimal amount of time. Then we get something back from them, like a certification or a letter of some type, I'm sure. And then that then prompts us to go out there and take the rest of our step. What we might need to do next, and this is what I need to confirm with the chief, is we might then need to actually set the new speed limit, because all we're doing is rescinding the existing speed limit. And it will default to what is now the townwide speed limit, but there might be a desire to set a new speed limit by, typically it goes to the safety committee first, and then the recommendations comes from the safety committee to the select board for you to vote on. And then we go out there and put up signs.
okay.
So
Thank you.
it can be,
Yeah,
there's still several steps in the process.
Joseph, then you.
No, I was just, I
Same thing.
misspoke, wanted to.
Yeah, and it occurs to me, I mean, if, once that's rescinded, we go take the 35-mile-an-hour signs down, right? At that point, that, I imagine that would be considered thickly settled, and therefore, the state speed limit of 30 miles an hour would apply until we decide what else to do. Would that be, is that something, is that a correct thought?
So the town adopted the, across the town's, well, we have to apply it to certain seats. So these are the first two streets that we're seeking to apply. The reason I'm not able to give you a direct answer is because this is the first time we're doing it. So I'd like,
the first street.
this is the first street we're doing it.
Right,
So
but in lieu of-
my understanding is yes, but I want to make sure that
Yeah,
I'm
okay.
100% accurate before I tell you.
Yeah, no, I imagine that in lieu of, if there's no specific action setting a speed limit, which is what we have the right to do,
Correct, yes.
then, state speed limits such as 30 miles an hour for thickly settled would apply.
That would be my assumption as well.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, I just don't want to put, have it suddenly go up to 50.
No, it would definitely not do that. And this is just the first time we're doing this, so we're working through the sequence as we do it.
Okay.
Correct me if I'm wrong, wasn't the revision at the state level, didn't thickly settled drop to 25 from 30? That's the
I thought so,
allowable
too.
drop?
Well, it allows us to select.
It allows us to. So right. So your comment, if we were to identify as thickly settled without adopting 25, it would be 30. But
We can then
And
go.
that then goes to the
Right.
process after we get that signed back to then potentially the safety committee and then back to this board.
right. And I know we've obviously been back and forth with the Transportation Advisory Committee, with the Safety Committee, and all on these issues. At some point, I'd love to get an update on just timeline on when those studies can be brought to bear and looking at the town at large. I think this is a complicated problem, and I think it's great that we're kind of putting our toe in the water with a couple to see what the process looks like. But,
Yep.
Hopefully that will allow us to adopt larger swaths of the land, and adopt these where we can.
Yeah, no, that's good.
I do appreciate the complexity.
Sorry.
No, I was just going to say it's complex.
I just confirmed it is 25. Well, whatever. Yeah.
Thank you.
What, thickly settled?
Yep.
Oh, cool.
Okay, so all in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. All right. On to item I.
Mr. Chairman? May I suggest we clean up the consent agenda and then not have it hanging over our head,
Let's do that.
since it's really a simple one? And then we can.
What, the warrant articles on us?
So the consent agenda, only one item, Natick Coffee DBA Starbucks application for a common victuals license. Anybody want to move it out of the consent agenda?
Hell no.
I move the consent agenda.
I will second it. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, let us now go back to item I, 2023 full annual town meeting articles. These largely have to do with charter and bylaw changes, in fact, exclusively have to deal with them. Article 25 is charter changes, 26 bylaw changes, Article 28, the appointment authority. I wanted to just read sort of a summary of what I thought we tee up for tonight. As you know, town meeting's continuing its review of Articles 25 and 26, sponsored by the CBRC tomorrow night. While we elected not to sponsor these articles as a board, I wanted to put together a document that we could leave on the table for town meeting members to help them understand the process of how these amendments were developed and the select board and town administrators' involvement in shaping them. Further, the select board sponsored Article 27 passed by town meeting, and Article 28 voted no action by town meeting. Because the board didn't have final motions on appointment authority from the CBRC, the board did not take a formal vote on Article 28, the appointment authority for controller, police chief, and fire chief from the select board to town administrator prior to town meeting. Thus, the town administrator requested no action at the finance committee, and no action was voted by town meeting. Amendment P of Article 25 covers the appointment authority of the select board and the town administrator. I wanted to give board members the opportunity to discuss the pros and cons of where the appointment authority for these positions belongs. It was not clear to me which direction the board wanted to head, so I'm opening all those items up for discussion. So, anybody want to say anything about any or all of them?
Digesting.
Okay. Oh, one thing I've neglected to point out is at the 11th hour, and I apologize for that, I actually sent out the document that I wanted to leave out on the table, and it's largely what I've just described, maybe slightly more detailed.
So I'm sorry, where is that document?
I sent it on email,
email.
Thank you.
maybe like 6 o'clock tonight. And I did not put it on Novus because I wanted to discuss it with the board before we
Understood.
made any decision. Where is that?
Okay, I didn't see that. Thank you.
All right, hold on. Did I send it? Yeah, there's. I sent it at 6:04 p.m. Just before I started walking. So maybe what we should do is, if you'd like to just pause for 5 minutes and read through that if you'd like.
So in the second paragraph,
Yep,
second sentence is written in the passive voice,
okay.
and it says warrant articles 25 and 26 were intentionally broadly defined, but doesn't say who intentionally broadly defined them. So rather than having that in the passive, if we choose to circulate this, I would indicate that the Charter, Bylaw, and Review Committee wrote warrant articles 25 and 26.
Okay. Do you want to say anything about the breadth, or just leave that out?
Yeah, I'm uncomfortable speaking for them. I know that they indicated, or that there had been an indication that they wrote them to be broadly defined to allow development of motions, but I'm uncomfortable that the select board would circulate something that would speak for them.
Okay.
And I would just end it at, that they wrote it.
Okay. That's paragraph 2. Thank you.
So paragraph 3, the last sentence, after a joint meeting with the CRBC, while the select board was hopeful that its needs would be addressed, it voted to sponsor 27 and 28.
Sorry, Catherine, where are you?
I'm sorry, paragraph 3, near the,
Okay, yeah. Okay.
after a joint meeting.
Yeah, got you.
I would strike all of that and just leave, I think you stated it before, saying that prior to closing the warrant, we sponsored 27 and 28 to ensure the select board and town administrative needs were addressed.
Okay. No, I think I looked at that too, and I just said, didn't I already say that? Okay.
Following the closing of the warrant, at a joint CRBC select board, select board CRBC meeting, this is the first sentence of the next paragraph. We didn't have a joint select board meeting following the closing of the warrant. That was at
Yes, we did.
Yeah, we did.
We did.
July 14th is when we had the joint meeting. When did the warrant close?
Oh, you're right.
Yeah, you're right.
So-
It wasn't following the. Right.
So when it
So-
happened was, at the
Yeah,
August,
the date's wrong.
August 14th, I'll just double check that date, select board
Use dates.
meeting, August 16th, the August 16th select board hearing,
Meeting.
select board hearing,
Yeah, meeting. It wasn't here.
meeting, I'm sorry, meeting, just taking that out. You suggested, I'm just going to leave a working group. I suggested a working group consisting of 2 select board members who'd represent this process. Resulted in the select board having strong input into Article 25 and 26 amendments. I'm not sure I agree with that. We had a 2-hour process and we walked away, a 2-hour meeting, and we walked away saying that we'd have to get back to them about the police chief and the fire chief.
Okay, but
Is that-
what I'm trying to convey there is that the working group, maybe not at that particular juncture, but through the work that the working group and the town administrator through the working group conveyed to the CBRC, that information was reflected in the development of Articles 25 and 26.
Can I ask for a distinction to be added?
Yeah, go on.
In all of the dialogue, Articles 25 and 26 are very broad in that they cover more than just town administrator or select board roles and responsibilities. And I know from my perspective, I only focus on town administrator components and provided my feedback on those. I did not provide feedback on the entirety of 25 and 26.
Okay.
I don't know if the board felt that you did. I
No,
don't believe you did. That's not what my impression was, but I don't believe the board did either.
The working group clearly focused on things
I think
related
that's
to the
important to
board
distinguish.
and the administrator's responsibilities.
Okay, so I can put a clarifying
There's a
statement.
lot of other things that are part of 25 and 26 that
No,
you
in
did
fact-
not touch at all.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
I think
no, that's
I
good.
remember distinctly saying that. It really isn't our purview to
Yeah.
tell town meeting what to do with town meetings
Yeah.
per se, unless it influenced what we were doing. So that, I agree. I don't know if you want to mention the specific amendments, but to be very clear about it, or just in a
Just
general
amendments.
sentence?
No, I think,
J and I or something. I think it was really just 2 amendments.
no,
that-
it's also
I-
P.
Well, I think I only looked at the ones that were town administrator focused.
Right, so,
Perhaps the working group worked at others on behalf of the board.
Right.
If we put at the end of that first sentence, who represented the
Might have been like
views
3 or
of the
4.
board and town administrator.
We could even footnote it, just say,
No, town meeting
Could be
members are not going to follow.
specifically amendments.
That directly affect town administration and the select board.
Yeah, and then the
hold on.
the letters couldn't hurt.
could probably put specifically amendments J and, I forget what they were, but
Yeah, I can look that up and run it by you, Jamie, and before I ask you guys to print it off and bring it.
sure.
That specifically address
I'm going to just run to my office real quick. I'm gonna have it.
town administrator and select board. And I'll just say, just a note to myself, delineate which amendments. Okay. Good suggestion. Excuse me, I'm about to sneeze.
Bless you.
It's coming. Better get on with it. Okay. Moment has passed.
The whole next sentence, this process resulted, ...
Yeah.
that reflects the input.
Yeah.
I'd strike that. I don't think we had
Now that
strong
we have
input.
that, yeah.
And it's repetitive.
Yeah, that's what happens when I write stuff at 5 in the morning.
Me too.
Okay. Okay. Are we good with the rest of the paragraph?
So we really couldn't make a decision about whether to co-sponsor the articles because we were waiting for the motions.
But we also said we didn't want to, because these were the CBRC's articles, and we were not sponsoring them.
Right, okay.
We wanted to not put our thumb on the scale for which amendments we wish to include, modify, or delete.
Do you intend for us to have the discussion about the police chief and fire chief tonight?
Yeah, I was
Okay.
hoping to do that because depending on the outcome, we have the opportunity as town meeting members to change
I got it. I have to get out.
who the appointing authority is, right? So when last seen, some of us believed that it should be transferred to the town manager, I'll call it, because that's what we're changing to. Others expressed reluctance to do it. So I just am opening it. One of the things that I had, when we were getting ready for town meeting, I had suggested that, there was a difference of opinion and suggested related through, I guess, the town administrator, no action because there was disagreement on whether the select board retained it or whether the select board gave up or transferred it to the town manager. So I just wanted to open it up to, possible discussion. We could, there are 3 choices here. We could either stand pat and say, wait till next year kind of thing.
If I may,
Let me go through the alternatives. Right, the other is we could say, take a vote and say, no, we'd like to transfer it to the town manager, and take a vote there. And then one of us could provide an amendment for Amendment P that adds it back in, adds the police chief and fire chief back in. So, Mr. Sidney.
In discussions with the CBRC while this was all being constructed, one of the things the CBRC recognized was that if we transfer the appointment of the chiefs, then specifically with the police department, there was an open question of whether transferring appointment for the officers should be included or not. And there was also this long discussion about the, how does the affirmative approval thing work? And I just want to put those on the table, that they complicate any amendments we might propose tomorrow night, to get all of that stuff that they put together in that isn't in there right now.
Yeah.
I just want to put that on the table.
Thank you. That's important to note, so.
Yeah, none of that applies to the comptroller, which we weren't moving anyway. None of it applies to the treasurer, collector, town clerk, or any of that. It's just specifically police and fire issues.
Right, and Mr. Erickson asked for us to remove comptroller. So that's a non-issue.
Well, we asked to remove comptroller, actually.
Based on Jamie's further reflection, as I recall. So anyway, it doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah. So, thoughts on how we should proceed?
Well, and look, there's a lot going on with this stuff. There's no imminent need necessarily. I personally had the concern, and in the finance recommendation book, it said at the October 2nd, 2023 meeting, we agreed to recommend no action. Which we was that? That was a Monday, October 2nd.
Maybe I just got
Monday,
the date
October
wrong.
2nd.
I wish we had our meeting minutes from the meeting before that, because I'm pretty sure we did, as a board, say we'll take no action because the CBRC is covering it. But I don't remember explicitly, and I don't have minutes that reflect that.
Yeah, but I
and
can
that's
get the date, though.
Well, the October 2nd was a Monday, and that was the night I spoke at a school committee meeting, and I don't recall
Yeah,
coming
I
to a
think
select
it's the
board
4th. I think I just have a typo there.
meeting. And that's, I don't remember us voting on it, but maybe we discussed it and decided not to take action on it. Like, we didn't vote to recommend no action. We just took no action. Is that right?
Yes, you're right.
Okay.
So,
That is
where in that document was that? I'm trying to remember.
Sorry, that's page 154 of the recommendation book,
Oh, so that's in their
in the FinCom book, yep.
I think
Okay.
that was the meeting that I also had to talk to the finance committee or the planning board.
Yeah.
We
because
were
we're both-
alternating back
right.
and forth.
Right.
So
I
that-
don't recall if that was the finance committee or the planning board. 'Cause I think it was
And that to me was where it was, I felt kind of like it flew through town meeting. It's that not that we recommended no action, but we took no action.
correct.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's, okay, so that
There's
was
a
my
distinction
hang-up
there
when
for
we-
sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where I wanted to be very clear about that
Yeah.
it was more of an issue of we weren't ready to take action on it. I think it's a deeper issue, and I think the officer's appointment was a big part of that.
Yeah.
So,
And some of that
Right,
could
hold
be
on,
a
hold on, Rich.
transcription issue on the
Hold on,
FinCom.
Hold on.
sorry?
Do I say that somewhere in this document? That I would,
In
that
your
we-
letter?
we-
Your letter? I don't think so. I
I just
think
want to be careful that I do.
I think less is more with the letter. I think it's just more laying things out. I think you did a good job covering the broad strokes.
Okay.
I think it's important to reinforce that we're trying not to get the executive branch into the legislative branch's purview.
Yeah.
I think that comes through.
Good.
But I also agree, I appreciate you bringing up the notion that we are supportive of a recommendation of our committee to consider a charter commission.
Yeah, I think I put that twice just for emphasis. Yep.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
to me, yeah, it's, look, my big issue with this is process much more so than product. As I said at town
Yeah.
meeting, I really appreciate the work the CBRC's been doing. It's complicated. They're trying to do a lot. And I think, and on the whole, support most of the recommendations they're making, because I think it's in the spirit of the incremental progress we'd like to see to make town meeting work more efficiently.
Yeah.
But I think this does a good job of sort of taking a step back and saying, but we should look at the big picture as well, in which they acknowledge they chose not to as part of their process this past year.
Yeah, and that is something that I hope comes through.
I think it does. And I don't feel a compelling need to make a decision on the appointment authority at this moment. I personally feel like if we're moving in that direction of moving towards a strong town manager, to hand that decision-making off, I think we defer in an awful lot, and that individual works with those chiefs in a lot of ways. But I also see the community's preference to have some kind of a conduit that's an elected conduit between those two, so I understand it. Maybe that happy medium is with the officers' appointments, but...
Yeah, I know. And that's sort of the sense I had. There were pros and cons to each approach, and I wanted us to have more time to really assess, what the scope of it was, and I didn't want us to be rushed into putting something in a charter change that we're locked into.
Yeah. And by it being voted no action, we can bring it back into spring or whenever if we want to.
We could anyway.
Right.
It's not a zoning
That's
official.
true. Okay, so with the amended letter, are you guys okay? If I circulate a draft of it tomorrow morning, will people be able to see it? I know.
Yes, and to be clear, we are not prepared as a board to make this determination on appointment authority or keeping the
That's
appointment. Okay.
For police and fire.
It's going to stay as is.
Okay.
Do it.
And when we had a discussion in our working group, Catherine and I, with the 3 members of the CBRC, we had a long discussion about whether the comptroller should move or not. And there are good arguments both ways, but one of the things that we realized during that meeting was that, and I think Jamie supported this ultimately, but we realized that there's a conduit out of the finance department to the select board through the appointment of the comptroller, that if we handed off the appointment authority of the comptroller, we might lose. In addition, there are good accounting reasons specifically for the comptroller to be separately appointed in order for separation of duties and separation of reporting authority relative to keeping the books. And while it complicates the town administrator's reporting authority, it's actually good accounting controls.
Okay, so another clarifying question. What I understood to be outstanding were the chiefs, not the controller.
Right, but I mean, we discussed the comptroller earlier as to not changing that authority, and it was in Article 28, so I just wanted to explain what that discussion was so that everybody on the board was aware of it.
Yeah, the comptroller, police chief, and fire chief stay as is, right? Nothing's changing in that.
Okay.
But they were all subject to Article 28. That's the only reason.
Correct.
Yeah.
All right.
And if I may, noting, as I've said publicly, I'm not running for re-election, so when this comes up for a potential spring article, I will not be a member of this board at that point. I'd love to have a conversation at some point just in general about it, maybe provide feedback, but just...
Well, actually, the warrant closes before the election.
Yeah, that's a good point. It will be. I guess that's fair. But, well, the warrant
Part of
is,
the
but
motion.
right,
Part of the
it could be.
article.
Yeah.
Can't escape that.
Well, there's part of me that feels strongly because I do, having the experience of been part of the hiring committee for the police and fire and a couple of comptrollers. I have some historical context, but on the flip side of it, I don't know how much that really matters. It's much more of a moving forward, thinking through the authority of this individual. But I think there's some value there.
No question. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Joyce.
Thanks.
Can I ask one more clarifying?
Please.
It's just the start of one of the paragraphs says prior to, and maybe you've already changed this a little bit, prior to the closing of the warrant, the select board and town administrator sponsored Article 27 and 28. I think they were only sponsored by the select board.
I think that's accurate.
Yeah. That's all right. Thank you. Good catch.
You gave us the language, but we sponsored them.
Yeah.
Correct. Yep.
Yeah, no, that's good.
as a matter of procedure, I appreciate you writing the letter in the first person. Do we want this to come from the board with your signature on it as opposed to it being
Yeah.
individual?
I can change that
I mean,
to make we.
Do we need a motion for that? No, probably, we can do
No,
it by
'cause
consensus.
that's- Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if that helps make the point, but I think because we were unified on those votes and this discussion, it would,
Yeah.
I think,
No, it
send a
makes-
stronger message that it's coming from the whole board.
Yeah, no, that's great. I appreciate that.
Yeah, and you can list all our names at the bottom.
Yes,
Even
I-
though you sign it.
Yep. Cool.
If it helps, I can work with you on just the final draft, just to
Absolutely.
get some of the wordsmithing in. Yep.
Yep.
Great. Thank you.
Cool. Thank
I
you.
appreciate that.
Appreciate all the feedback. Okay, town administrator notes, B flat. No,
A sharp?
sure.
Do you have any notes for this week, do you? No notes this week. We had a great Halloween in this building where we had, and really across town where, and Ms. Coughlin actually came in and visited us and some others where we actually had a encouragement for town staff to show their spirit if they wanted to. And so that was really great to see. I think it was a while where, partly due to the pandemic and some other reasons where we were able to really just show some spirit as a town hall and across the community. Yeah. I know the libraries did something similar, and so did a lot of other buildings and departments. So it was neat. But no other notes.
I encountered, I was actually at the library doing something or other, probably moving books. And the number of trick-or-treaters who were there, and the library staff were all in costume, and
Year
it was
two.
a lot of fun.
Yeah, almost the whole building dressed up. It was really nice to see the employees.
We had a picture that we took out in front of Town Hall, so if you get any complaints about us not working for a 10-minute time, it was because we were outside taking a picture as a group.
Yeah.
That's working. Building culture.
It's working.
I call it retention.
Hey,
Employee retention.
that's Cognex for many years had that reputation of marching their guys out there.
Mr. Chair, just if I could on the Halloween theme, I guess, the Recreation and Parks Department is going to be doing a pumpkin smash on Sunday the 5th at Memorial School, kind of a partnership with the fire department, the organic farm, and Black Earth composting. So kind of a way to recycle old pumpkins and things along those lines. So you can find out more information on the Rec and Parks Department page, but just could be a cool family event for people who want to get rid of their pumpkins and keep celebrating the.
Can we put a link on that on the homepage? Just yeah, that would be good.
Well, it's not as good as those, what was it, the pumpkin shooting things?
Catapult.
All right, let's move on. Let's try to end this before 10. Select board's concerned.
It's not of concern. I probably should have brought it up in the announcements, but two things. There's through Spark Kindness Week and in collaboration with the Natick Rotary and Keep Natick Beautiful, there's going to be a community big leaf rake at Cedar Gardens on Sunday. Also, you're mentioning Sunday the 5th reminded me, from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. And I know the members of the Rotary will be cooking up lunch for those that volunteer to come out and help rake our public housing at Cedar Gardens. So that's happening. The other thing I just want to say is thank you to the Cultural District and to the Rec and Parks Department for a very successful spooktacular. As one of the business owners on the Common, I went through 1,200 or so pieces of candy. Wow. And I just want to say to the parents out there, the vast majority of kids that came through asked, how many can we take? Yeah. And we're respectful of what was there. And in some cases, the kids were more respectful than the grown-ups. And I have to say, it was just such an amazing transitioning from the farmers market to the spooktacular. And I know there was a wonderful Indian cultural event of shadow puppet dancing at the spiritual center right afterwards. Saturday was another great example of what we do as a community when we come outside and be together. And as we talk about mental health and community, I just couldn't think of a better example. And it's obviously being 80 degrees, it was an amazing day on top of it. But it was very well run by everybody and greatly appreciated.
Yep. Thank you for that, Mr. Joseph. Any other select board?
Actually, Mr. Chair, in response to your question, Diwali will be celebrated on November 12th, falling on a Sunday, and there are sure to be events. I'd like to wish all of our Hindu neighbors and friends and family happy Diwali. It's one of the big festivals of the fall. So happy Diwali, everyone.
A lot of nice food.
Yeah, great. That's thank you very much. Also, to remind people, there will be 2 Veterans Day events. One is at the Kennedy Middle School, where veterans will be pairing up and answering questions from students about Veterans Day and sharing their experiences, and it's always well attended, and it really is a great experience for everyone, both the students and the veterans. There are a few veterans who seem to have collect students from other tables because they're so entertaining with their stories. And the other is the Veterans Day Parade, which I believe starts at the Common at 9:30 on Saturday. Is that right? Okay. So hopefully we'll have some nice weather. Anyway, anything else? Going once, going twice.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All right, let's all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We're done. Thank you. Thanks for sticking with us. I know this is a long one.